So we have a bit of a poop bandit situation at work. To clarify, this was all pre-COVID. The office I worked at was a huge office building. On our floor alone, we probably had close to 200 people. And we had 2 different bathrooms. So the one was a normal, like 5 or 6 stalls bathroom.
Yes.
And then at the other at the other end of the hall was a single stall.
You gotta be careful with those single stalls.
You really do. The one day I come into work and everyone's kind of doing the whisper thing. And so as soon as I walk in, someone goes...
I've heard this story, so just know that Hannah's trying not to laugh right now.
Someone goes, "You have to check your emails." And I was like, okay, like that seems weird, but whatever. So I log into my computer, and the first email that's at the top is about proper etiquette in a bathroom.
Bathroom etiquette, one might say.
Bear in mind, most people who work in my office are 20 years and older.
Someone was bearing a lot more.
Anyways, there's an email about how, for lack of not using curse words, no, let's just use it, a pile of shit was found in the trash can. And for reference, because I sent you a picture, the trash can is probably 4 feet away from the toilet. So someone at first was like, well, maybe it was one of those situations where you just had to go. If you can shit in the trash can, you certainly could have made your way over to the toilet.
Yes.
So I think it was a vendetta. About a week later, I was at my other office location, because we have 2 offices, and this one's a much smaller office. And this guy I work with was like, something smells off in this desk area. And so we took the trash out, because the trash, we were like, it probably has food in it. It's probably been sitting there. And like, it's like 2 hours later and it still just smelled awful. And so he's like, pulls the trash can out. We discovered what looked like a turd on the floor. And so we got the person who works at the front office, and we said, like, hey, we're concerned there might be shit on the floor. We did not say shit.
Yes, excrement.
Yes. Anyways, so the cleaning people were there. They came with their gloves and took care of it.
Yes. God bless those people.
God bless them, because honestly, they don't get paid enough money to deal with that shit.
Figuratively and literally.
Literally speaking. And then probably a week later, in the main bathroom, someone had gone and clogged all the toilets on purpose. Like, purposely shoved a ton of toilet paper. So clearly there's a poop bandit on the loose. And they clearly have a vendetta against the company I work for.
Yes. I think on that vein, you should probably share the story of what you saw in a security camera one time.
Oh my god, I forgot about this. This is golden.
Maybe my favorite story.
Okay, so in college, I worked for like a counseling nonprofit organization. I'll just leave it at that. And part of the volunteer thing was that you had to work a midnight shift every month. It was like midnight till 8 a.m. or something like that. And that particular night, I was sitting in our main room, which happens to have the security cameras. You can watch all the footage of the outside. And I'm watching, and normally you'll see people walk down the street. It's a busy street, so you'll see people walking down. And so nothing that strange. So this night, I'm like, I'm bored, nothing's happening, and I'm looking at the camera, and I noticed this guy kind of, like, stumbling. And I was like, well, he's probably been drinking.
There are several bars in that area.
And I was like, good for him for walking home. Anyways, so he kind of goes against the side of the building that I am sitting in, and I'm like, oh, he looks like he's about to pee or throw up. I couldn't really tell. He was kind of squatting. Takes his pants, pulls them down, and literally squats and shits on the sidewalk. as I'm sitting there watching, not really believing what's happening.
Who takes a shit on the sidewalk? Who does that? Like peeing. Yeah, I get it.
Anyways, so he takes his shit, pulls his pants back up, and just keeps on walking like nothing happened. And I'm just sitting there like, did I dream this whole thing?
So ridiculous.
Oh, man. And I remember when I told you about it, you were like dying.
Yeah, because it was ridiculous.
Oh.
I can't imagine just seeing someone do that on video camera.
It was one of those moments where you'd have to see to believe. Like, you
Right.
don't really think people do that. But, I mean, I did watch a man take a shit on the side of the street.
Welcome to Research, Rank, and Repeat.
This is Hannah.
This is Alyssa.
And we're going to jump right back into Pixar discussion and continue on with the next set of movies.
All right, now this is where we get the big guns.
Yeah.
Start coming in hot.
Yeah.
Finding Nemo.
2003.
2003. We took a 2-year break.
Yep.
So Finding Nemo, again, is rated G. Its runtime is 1 hour and 43 minutes.
And this is a huge jump. So, worldwide box office, $936 million.
So, Finding Nemo has a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic score of 90 out of 100, and a cinema score of A+.
Okay.
So, another thing to note is that Finding Nemo was nominated for the Best Animated Feature and won.
Okay.
Was the first Pixar movie to win Best Animated Feature.
Okay.
It was also nominated for Original Screenplay as well.
Yes. Little summary. When young clownfish Nemo is unexpectedly captured from Australia's Great Barrier Reef and is taken to a dentist office aquarium, it is up to Marlin, his worrisome father, and Dory, a friendly but forgettable regal blue tanefish, to make the epic journey to bring him home. All these descriptions I'm getting are from Disney Plus's website. I have a question. Do you think that... I mean, obviously it's been 2 years since the last Pixar movie before Finding Nemo. Do you think the big jump in the box office had anything to do with Ellen being the voice of Dory?
I don't know, because when we saw Finding Nemo, I can't say that I was at that age that I knew who Ellen was, or we watched her show.
I mean, well, when did her show start?
I mean, she was probably well known at the time, and I think her talk show probably started around then. I mean, Ellen's standing in the world right now is a whole other story.
That's also... there's just such a big jump in the 2 years.
Here's what I think. I think it really helps that it's a aquatic under the sea.
Yeah.
Because think about Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid was one of the highest grossing Disney movies of all time from that era, the Renaissance era.
Ellen's show actually started in 2003.
Okay.
So I would not actually think that was the reason.
So it had just started. I think it's because at this point Pixar had clout. Pixar was well known.
Yeah, they had made a couple good movies.
They made great movies. Yeah. They had Disney's backing.
I also think, like what you're saying about the aquatic, like I think there's something so... We don't know what's in the ocean a lot of times.
Or it's very unknown.
It's like mysterious. Yeah. And I think a lot of people really like that aspect. So I can definitely see that being...
The other thing I think could contribute is this movie's format and structure feel completely different to the other four that we've already seen. I would agree. A note I made is I said there's a pretty large tonal shift in like the way the story is structured because instead of majority of the movies we have set locations. You have very set structures. Finding Nemo is you're only spending like 5 to 10 minutes in a place at a time.
And then you're moving.
And then you're moving right on to the next one. So it's just like it's a single father and he loves his child and he just wants the best for him. It's just the way the story's told, I think it's just so unique to what we had seen at this point.
Adding on, my first note was actually the animation in this one just hits differently.
I said the opening shot is beautiful and because at this point we hadn't really seen like water
besides
animated.
the raining in Bug's Life.
Right.
The way they did the water, the way they do the fish, the way they... It's just something... There's just something different about it. It's kind of stunning to look at.
And it's also interesting, going into it, is this is technically our first Pixar death.
Yeah.
With Nemo's mom and Nemo's siblings being eaten. And it happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
It's actually really tragic. When you think about a kid's movie starting out 5 minutes in and having technically 400 characters, if you want to count all the fish, but having like a side character like that just literally be dead at the beginning.
Yeah.
It is like really tragic.
Nemo is captured 15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And Dory arrives 2 minutes after he's captured, and somehow it doesn't feel rushed.
Yeah. Because when you think about it, so much happens in the first, like, 15 to 20 minutes.
There are periods of this movie that so much happens in such a short period of time, and there's other movies where they just let it ride out.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they managed to make it flow so well.
It never feels like there's too much happening.
And I think the longest movie at this point, it's an hour and 43 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's 10 minutes longer than the last one.
The thing I really appreciate about this movie is the adventure aspect of it. It just flows so smoothly.
The adventure and the pairing of Marlin and Dory.
Yeah.
Is something that I don't know how they came up with.
It's
because
a really smart pairing.
It's such a strange pairing, but it works so well.
Yeah.
They play off of each other so well.
The way I kind of see it is you have Marlin, who's this fearful, rightfully so, because his wife was murdered. And
He's paranoid.
He's a very fearful character. And then you have Dory, who kind of, due to her not, like, remembering things, she doesn't really know fear.
Yeah, she's very carefree because she doesn't have that holding her back.
And it's interesting to see how they play off each other and also what kind of things they give to each other throughout the movie.
Dory is so likable.
Yeah.
She's such a likable character. She's naive, but in a great way.
Yeah. You can't help but, like, root for her.
No, yeah.
And you also, I feel like you can't help but root for Marlin because it's just that, like, bond between father and son and, like, him being so afraid, him growing so much.
Dory brings out so much in him. Yeah. Because, like she says later, like, she needs him and he needs her. Like, they need each other.
I also think it's interesting because I think this might have been one of the first times where you've had a character who's outwardly portrayed with mental illness.
Yes, I think so.
In Marlin with depression and anxiety and then
paranoia.
It's because you didn't really get that.
There's so much we can talk about.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention, because I brought it up with A Bug's Life, is Finding Nemo does a great B plot with Nemo in the tank.
I like
every single character in that tank has something to give, and the setting of a dentist's office is great. I love, like, their heist, the tank heist, and everything that goes along with it. I think that's a great way to have a self-contained story in a very small setting, because the whole other, like, everything with Marlin and Dory is so vast.
It's so many different places, and then you have literally characters stuck in a tank, and every character's there for a reason. They find a way to make it. The humor in that tank, the scene where he's being initiated is so funny. Yeah, I would agree that I think this is one of the movies where they do the A and B subplot really well.
Very, very well.
Where both subplots are equally interesting to me. I also, the one other main thing I really wanted to point out is the evolution of certain characters.
Yes.
I really like how they portray someone in Marlin who's, controlled by their fear.
Yes.
For good reason.
And he has to learn to let go.
Yeah. And also, like, Nemo watches his dad his whole life be controlled by fear, and he, like, so desperately wants to not be like that.
Right.
That he basically gets himself in trouble because he's trying to be not what his dad was.
And again, we forgot to mention Nemo has a disability as well.
Oh, yeah.
And Dory learning how to count on other people.
Yeah, and how to be, like, part of a family.
Right.
Obviously, they make Finding Dory. They go into her more, but...
Right. But
as, like, a side character, I feel like they give good development. You even get good development with Gil.
Yes, you get good development with Gil.
You learn about his past. Like, Nemo relates to him because he also has, not, like, a disability, but he has, like, a giant scar from trying to escape, and I just think it's interesting how they're able to develop a lot of these side characters so well.
So I kept a running list. I may have missed one here or there, but Dory calls Nemo a different name almost every time she refers to him. Mm-hmm. She calls him Chico, Fabio, Bingo, Harpo, and Elmo, and he's also known as Sharkbait.
Right.
So he may be the character with the most names in a Pixar movie.
Yeah. I also really like all the side characters they come across. Marlin and Dory and like the sharks and
the turtles,
Squirt and Crush. Like I really think that they make such compelling side characters. Also point out that the group of fish
is played by John Ratzenberger.
Yeah, so the ones who are giving Dory and Marlin instructions.
Yes, to go over, not through the trench.
And then they go through the jellyfish.
And that actually leads right into something I want to talk about, where actions have consequences in this movie. Where Marlin is manipulating Dory, and then she ends up getting stung and injured by these jellyfish, and he feels incredibly guilty, so much so that when they're in the whale, he lets go because he has to learn, last time I didn't trust Dory, this is what happened.
And he learns to be able to trust other people.
Right.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else I want to talk about before we get into characters and scenes.
So technically, there is a short chase near the end of the movie where Nigel has them in his mouth and he's being chased by the seagulls. This is the first movie where it does not happen like at the end of the movie. The other thing I want to note is that I think they stepped up music design and sound design in this movie because the score is done so well. Yeah. I just think, I guess the last note I wanted to say is I just feel like Finding Nemo is such a heartwarming movie.
It is.
Because it's all about, like, family and acceptance.
It is, and it's a movie that's done so well in so many aspects. And coming up on, like, I had such a hard time picking a favorite character because I feel like they did the characters so well. It was one of the times where, like, when I thought of a list of favorite characters, like, some of the first ones that came to my head were side characters.
I did as well.
And I think that might be a testament to the writers just writing such strong side characters. I ended up actually not going with a main character.
Okay.
I feel like I could have easily picked any of the three main characters, but I actually ended up going with Gil.
Okay. That was a strong contender.
Okay. For me, personally, I think Gil brings a lot to the movie.
He does.
He's a big part of why the subplot works so well. Nemo's never had, like, a mentor like that who's kind of more fearless.
And he's so driven.
Yeah.
He's just, like, he'll do whatever it takes to accomplish his goal, even if it means hurting Nemo. And once that, almost happens, then he comes to this, you can see it in his face, like, this realization,
I
like,
actually
I've
wrote
gone
down,
too far.
It might be one of my favorite lines. Gil's talking to Nemo, and he said, I was so ready to get out there, so ready to taste the ocean. I was willing to put you in harm's way to get there. Nothing should be worth that.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's, like, such a eye-opening moment for him where he's
so
like,
blinded by his drive to be free.
That he doesn't even realize what he's doing to other people.
I agree. I think he's probably, so far, the best done side character. Yeah. I ended up going with Dory because I think what you said was right earlier, where, like, we had not seen the fact that there's such a great character who has a mental disability, who is so likable, who's so funny, and she's also so, like, vulnerable. Yeah. She's so vulnerable. And I like that she can be that open and that vulnerable and still be so free and so, like, I don't know. I just think she's a really well done character. I think
going off of that really quick, one of the things I do like is they allow the male characters to be vulnerable as well.
Yes, Marlin. Yeah. Marlin's probably the most, like, sensitive.
Even, like, Gil.
Yeah.
Like, they allow him to have these moments where you don't see a lot of masculine vulnerability.
Right.
And
like, sensitivity.
And I think it's good for kids to see that because it's, like, teaches you that, like, there's always, like, oh, boys shouldn't cry, blah, 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 they shouldn't express their feelings, but I feel like it's a good thing to see, like, male figures in these movies portraying emotions
and like also showing their insecurities, and I think it's good.
So, favorite scene?
This was probably the hardest for me, was to pick a specific scene. I want to say visually, my favorite scene is when they're going to school. Yes. When they're going through the coral reef.
Whole, like, different...
Visually, that's my favorite scene, but for, like, the actual, like, scene Foley, I picked Inside the Whale.
Okay.
When they're inside the whale, because you see Marlin give up.
Right.
And Dory is telling him she needs him, he shouldn't give up. they'll be okay, and then he learns to trust her.
Yeah. It's a definite, like, shift between their relationship, where he's finally learning to trust. And
trust her and rely on her.
And in return, I think she feels like she's contributing more. She's being listened to and being heard. So, in terms of favorite scene, I think it was actually the one that I talked about with Gil and Nemo, like, them having a discussion, but I also think one of my favorite lines, more of a comedic, is, oh my gosh, Nemo's swimming out to sea! Okay.
My favorite funny line is also from around that scene, and it's when the manta ray goes, there's nothing to see.
Yeah.
It's like, over here, kids.
Yeah. Also, we didn't even talk about him. He's such a good side character,
He's a great side character, too.
We could go on and on.
But I just love the timing of the way he says that.
Yeah.
My favorite serious line, though, is after he's seen Nemo dead.
Yeah.
Or believed to be dead. And, Dory's trying to convince him that she needs him, and she just... the back and forth, right at the end, she says, I don't want to forget, and Marlon says, I'm sorry, but I do. And I was just like, I hate it.
Yeah, that's because it shows the conflicting, like, emotions where they're at that point.
Yeah, because basically he's lost his... At this point, he's lost his wife, he's lost those children, he's lost his son, he has nothing left, and all he wants to do is just forget and move on. And Dory's like, I can't move on because I want to remember.
And it's like the first time she's remembered.
And she's like, with you, I can remember things, and I can, I'm not lost. Yeah, I thought it was just really well done. Yeah. And, like, it punched.
I would agree.
Punched me right in the throat. In the heart.
Punch.
Throat punch and a heart kick. All right, and now... we're hit with another big gun. Back to back, 2 years in a row, we go to The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Released in 2004.
The next year.
So, The Incredibles is the first Pixar movie to be rated PG. I wonder why. Maybe it's the suicide jumper.
Maybe it's the violence.
Maybe it's Mrs. Incredible and her body proportions.
Spandex.
And her spandex suit.
Outfits.
It could be all of those things, but the runtime is 1 hour and 55 minutes, which again is the longest running Pixar movie to this date.
Yes. So in terms of money wise, Incredibles actually, let me double check, because I think it actually took a jump down.
It did on the one I'm looking at.
Yeah, it was $631 million worldwide.
It made less than Monsters, Inc.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
So, The Incredibles has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has the same score as Finding Nemo, 90 out of 100 on Metacritic, and also has an A+ rating. So, that is so interesting to me that The Incredibles, like, still made a lot of money, but took a dip. In terms of
that's why I'm still
revenue.
So perplexed with Finding
how it did so well.
How it just had such a huge jump.
It might have just been, like, the perfect storm.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I remember it being huge.
Yeah.
When we were kids.
And I mean, I think you would have to look at what else came out around that time and everything like that. Little summary. As Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, Bob and his wife Helen were among the world's greatest crime fighters. But 15 years after their glory days, they have been forced to adopt civilian identities and live normal lives with their 3 kids. Itching to get back into action, they get their chance when a mysterious communication summons Bob to a remote island.
So, just a comment I want to make is I think this is the first Pixar movie that is an adult movie that is placed into animation.
Yes.
Because I think it is not catering to children, it's just using the animation medium to tell the story.
I would agree. My first note about the movie is just, this is Pixar at its best.
My first note, I just said, I'm just excited to be watching this in general.
And the first thing you see is them doing all these interviews, and I was like, it's actually a really compelling introduction.
It's very interesting, and also, it's the first Pixar movie that is entirely about humans.
Yeah.
Because previously, they didn't like to do human because they couldn't do the animation justice. Because it was just so hard to do faces.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that they actually used, there's a book, these medical books called Grey's Anatomy. Mm-hmm. Not the TV show, obviously.
No, the TV show.
But they used the books as examples for how to design the humans. Like, how to make them look human and everything like that.
Just from the start, I want to give a special shout out to the orchestrator and director of the music, Michael Giancarlo. I can't pronounce last names if that's not clear, but basically he did the music for Lost.
Okay.
He will continue to do more work for Pixar, and I will discuss him. He's done so many iconic themes, but the music of The Incredibles is by far the best soundtrack we've heard.
Yes, for
by
sure.
far, the way they use the music and the leitmotifs, and when I get to my favorite scene, the way they use the music in the scene, it's just as a whole.
Yeah.
It's such a great use of using the music to enhance the movie.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, there's something just so iconic about The Incredibles in the soundtrack and the score of it. And, like, when I think of really good, like, Pixar or Disney-scored movies, I always think about The Incredibles.
I will say, I can't say if it's my favorite, but it is.
But it's up there. It's definitely up there.
So, let's just say Elastigirl's a feminist icon.
Oh, yeah. I said she's all about female empowerment.
First of all, we'll get on to Mrs. Incredible later on, but I do want to talk about her as a character, just the way she sees the world and deals with it, because I think the contrast between her and Mr. Bob and her is very interesting. But we start off this movie with them in the past.
Yes.
And you've got a suicide jumper that's rescued. You've got a guy trying to bomb a bank.
Yeah.
You've got Mr. Incredible's stalker.
What's his name?
Buddy.
Yeah.
His sidekick. There's so much going on that, like, this itself could just be the story.
Yeah.
You could just tell them at, like, the heyday and the height of these heroes, and it's strictly just introduction. It's just to introduce you to the world and the story.
Yeah, I mean, you basically have all this leading up to a wedding.
Right.
Between Bob and Helen's wedding. And they allude to it multiple times.
They allude to it, and there's such a flirtatious nature between them, like, pretending they don't know each other, or, necessarily.
But, yeah, I agree with you, that introduction, and there's just so much packed in there. But it's also, like, I would agree, it's like Finding Nemo, where it doesn't feel rushed. Getting back to Elastigirl, we talked about this earlier, this is, like, one of the first times where they actually had, like, a lead female character.
I guess the way you were looking at the story structure, Mr. Incredible is, like, the lead.
Right.
She's also a lead, but following him. Then we transition to the reason the superheroes have to go into hiding is because they keep getting sued.
Yeah.
Which is such I love it. It's such a great concept, but it's so foreign. The suicide jumper didn't want to be saved. Yeah. Because he's sustained injuries,
he's now suing.
He's now suing him.
And it's interesting because a lot of shows, a lot of superhero shows, superhero movies, they never focus on the people who get affected negatively by superheroes.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing I want to talk about is they did such a great job characterizing the children.
Okay, you're like reading my mind because that was what I was going to get into. I normally find children in movies to be annoying.
I do too.
At some point, and I think with Dash and with Violet, with Jack, he's not like in it a ton in this movie.
I was gonna say he's kind of just present.
But I think like they did such a good job of making them kids, still making you feel like you're watching kids or teenagers, but also like making them such compelling characters.
And also the fact that their characterizations are associated with their powers. Yeah. Violet feels invisible.
Right. And she has invisible powers.
And Dash is, he uses it for mischief and he wants to stand out and he wants to be good. Right. And a scene or a thing that I thought was really interesting is there's a part where she's talking, I believe it's either to Dash or to Violet or both of them. And she's just like, everyone is special. And then one of them, I didn't write down which one, says another way of saying no one is. Yeah, I think that correlates later to where Syndrome is like, if everyone's super, no one is. Yeah. And I caught that and I'm like, oh, look at that catch.
One thing I did notice, I thought it was interesting how the last movie was Finding Nemo is all about like fears and sheltering children. Right. And this movie is all about like fearless people empowering their children. To be like great people, great and super,
to grow into themselves.
To be fair, they have superpowers, but also like it's just interesting to see that shift.
Oh my god, the super fight at the kitchen table, is so funny. The fact that he's just running around slapping her, like, in a circle, and then she, like, And
then, Frozone knocks on the door, and they're all just, like, act normal.
I love that aspect, and I love that Bob is so obsessed with his glory days. Yeah. He can't get away from that.
I think because he's stuck in a office job
that he hates,
40 hours a week, like, just feeling like he's in such a rut, in such a routine of doing the same thing every day, which I think a lot of people can relate with that.
Yes.
But I think he just feels so stuck and trapped in that aspect, and he also doesn't feel like he's accomplishing. I mean, his job essentially is to
deny people rights to do things.
And you see him with the old lady, you see him, like, helping people. Like, he's always wanted to help people, and so he's trying to find ways to do it.
Oh, yeah, that hit really hard for right now, where when he's talking to him about how he's like, somehow all of your customers know every loophole to get through the system, and he's like, I thought we were supposed to help people, and he says, we're supposed to help our people. And I was like,
that is very
that fitting. Feels really relevant right now.
Also, I would like to point out that the boss should have died. He got thrown through 4 walls.
Somehow he survived. Is Frozone the first person of color in a Pixar movie? Do we know? I was trying to think if there's at least anyone who's spoken a spoken.
Yeah, I mean, they potentially could have had, like, background people,
but
in,
at
like,
least
Toy
as
Story,
a featured character, like, named voiced character. Okay, which I thought, and Samuel L. Jackson, great choice.
Yeah,
I like that he goes along with what Bob wants to do because they're friends, but he's like, we don't need to be doing this.
But he also, like, he just wants to be, like, have the normal life. Like, he's trying to... He's not necessarily so fixated with reliving his glory days.
But he's trying to be supportive.
Yeah, he even says that. He says, for once, I just wish we would do what our wives thought we were doing. Like, going bowling.
And my favorite part of that scene, when they accidentally break into the jewelry store by going through the brick wall, is the police officers run in and you hear someone yell, police officers!
Yeah, I literally noticed that. He goes, instead of saying police, they say police officer.
How did they get away with having so much, like, sex appeal in this movie?
I don't know.
Like,
there's a lot
of it.
Nods to it.
Like, there's a part where Mrs. Incredible is checking out her own ass in a mirror, and she's like, she's like, oh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she crushes somebody with her ass in a door. Does. And I'm like, how did this get past, like, Pixar's censors? Is this why it's rated PG?
Maybe. One other thing. Oh, so, just pointing out, because we're keeping track of when John Ratzenberg shows up. He doesn't appear until the end. He's the Underminer.
The Underminer.
Who is technically, well, not really even the villain for the next movie, but who is set up to be, like, the villain for the next sequel. So he briefly appears.
Makes a brief appearance.
To put that out there.
We also need to talk about the greatness that is Edna Mode.
Oh, my God.
Voiced by director Brad Bird. He plays her. She is amazing.
Yeah, she's one of those side characters where you just, like, if she wasn't in the movie, you feel like the movie's missing out.
She's so animated and, like, over dramatic, and I just, like, she's such a small role, but she's so great.
She brings so much to the movie. She adds so much.
What I love about Mrs. Incredible is she doesn't need to be a superhero.
Yeah.
She had that life, she lived it, she's, thankful for it, but she doesn't need that, but she steps up when she has to. And that's what I think makes her great, is because she doesn't, like, previous to going to find Bob and, being struck by missiles on a plane, she's like, I don't need to be out doing this. Right. That's not something that's important to me.
Like, her family is enough for her.
But once she's put in the position, she's immediately switched on, and she's right in, and,
and I mean,
nothing's changed.
I like that she gets her... I mean, she basically, like, just destroys everyone.
Yeah. She takes out tons of people.
Also, like, I like that the kids you get to see them experimenting and developing their powers. You get to see Violet a lot struggling.
Well, I like that, like, she's so hard on Violet in that scene because it's so tense, because she's like, you need to make a force field now. And clearly Violet has no experience because, like, that's not something that
and I think her fear, Helen's fear, like, causes her to, like, lash out. But she does apologize. She does apologize. She's like, I shouldn't have been so hard on you. Yeah.
It's such an intense situation. She has to save her kids. She's got to find her cheating husband. Yeah. She's got to investigate this base. Plane's gotten blown up. Also, she casually knows how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
No issues.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things I like is when they all get to the island. Like,
oh
they just do action sequences so well in this movie.
Well, I like because everybody gets a chance to shine.
Yeah.
Then we also get a chase sequence. This, again, is not at the end of the movie. It's more like Dash being chased.
Yeah.
But he's, like, running across water. He's running through the jungle. That is actually the first scene I saw of this movie.
Okay.
Before it came out.
Okay.
Because you may remember when smart boards became a thing.
Yes.
I worked for my elementary school library.
And by work, she means it was child labor.
It was child labor. We filmed our own school productions. Like, we had a switchboard, we ran cameras, had a couple different angles, and after one of those performances, our tech guy who worked in the elementary school, we had just, like, gotten the smart board, so he was showing us it, and he's like, here, and it included a clip of The Incredibles, and it was that Dash running scene.
Interesting.
So that's, like, probably the scene I think of probably the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, like, I love Syndrome. Yeah. He's a well-done villain. He's so vengeful and spiteful because he was rejected that he's like, I just need to be the only one who can be great because everyone else wronged me.
Well, and I think you get a good background on him. You get his introduction, like, 20 years prior, and seeing him as a kid, all he wants is to be a hero. And he wants to be, like, recognized.
And then he literally murders every single superhero.
I know. Can we talk about that?
It's crazy that he basically has Mirage scouting out people who are supers, just trying to find them in their hidden lives, bring them to this island to, like Mr. Incredible. A lot of them probably miss doing hero work, want to relive their glory days.
And he's trying to essentially upgrade his creation,
to be the most superior out of all of them.
And his end goal, ultimately, you see, is he's trying to bring that to the world and become the hero. Like, he's basically making his own disaster that to become
only
the hero.
He can fix. Although he messes up.
Yeah, it does not work out for
And then
him.
we get a great second action sequence in the city.
Yeah, and then he also ends up literally getting shredded.
Yep, he wore a cape
by a plane.
Shouldn't have had the cape. There's so much we could talk about with this movie, but it's got great action. They did action scenes super well. Music is amazing.
The characters are really well developed.
The characters are great.
One last thing I just wanted to point out.
Okay.
One of the things I really liked is when there's a parallel where Mr. Incredible for the first time sees all the superheroes who have died.
Yes.
And it's going through and it's saying, like, missing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And terminated, I think they use. And at the same time, you get a clip of Helen calling Bob's office, trying to figure out where her husband is. It's a really good parallel to me.
Well, that is my pick for the best scene in the
really?
movie.
Okay.
Yes, because the music.
Yeah.
The reason why that scene is amazing is the build-up. Because you basically get Bob, and he's, like, evaded death. Yeah. He's snuck into this thing. He's given Kronos, like, from Gazer Beam, I think, or Phaser Beam, whatever, the Gazer Beam, I think.
Phaser Beam.
It's one or the other. Yeah. He's given him a password, so he goes in, and he's just seeing everyone he knows is dead.
Yeah.
Every single person, and you've got Mrs. Incredible, on the other side, learning about her husband's infidelity.
She's basically finding out that...
Well, her apparent, the suspected infidelity.
She thinks he's cheating, and he's been lying to her regardless.
And there's just this build-up of, like, watching it, just every single person he knows, watching them terminating. That scene, I think, just the way it's built is such a solid scene.
Yeah, I would agree. So that was my favorite scene. I think my other favorite scene is the end with the track race.
Yes. As a humor, I love it.
It's really good humor. Basically, like,
Dash
trying to they want him to compete, but they also don't want him to use his powers as a way to cheat, basically.
Right. They want him...
he's trying to, like, he's, like, way in the back, and they're like, no, go for third or second, and the guy next to the family just watching, like, what are you doing? Like, this is insane.
They're like, don't go so slow. They're like, wait, no,
but
not
that's
first,
funny.
not first.
I think all of my favorite lines have to do with Honey.
Yes.
Who is actually the name of Frozone's wife.
Yes.
Used to think it was a nickname. It turns out her name's actually Honey.
So, I think the best quote is, "Where's my super suit?"
Yeah.
and then I am the greatest good you are ever going to get.
Yeah.
It's for the greater good.
Yeah. He said, the greater good, I'm your wife, I'm the greatest good
you're ever going to get. It could have just been a throwaway.
But it's one of the best scenes in the movie.
It's one of the most quoted scenes in the movie. It's just...
the only other line I really like, well, there's a lot I really like, but the one I liked is, you sly dog, you got me monologuing. I think we probably both have the same favorite character.
I think so, just from the way we've talked about her. Yeah, Mrs. Incredible, Elastigirl.
She has a lot to offer to the movie.
She's just such a strong character.
Yeah. And we already talked quite a bit about her, but
yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Now,
okay. We have to take a little detour.
Let's get into it, and then I'm just gonna say something.
We gotta take a little detour down Route 66 in the year 2006.
The land of Cars.
The land of Cars. Now, Cars was rated G, and it is still to this date, I believe, the longest running Pixar movie, coming in at 1 hour and 57 minutes.
Yep. It grossed $461 million in worldwide box office.
Okay. So Cars has a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 73 out of 100 on Metacritic, and it has an A CinemaScore rating.
Yeah. Little summary. Race car Lightning McQueen is living in the fast lane until he hits a detour and gets stranded in Radiator Springs, a forgotten town on Route 66. There he meets a heap of hilarious characters who help him discover there's more to life than fame. I would just like to start out by saying when I was younger, I was obsessed with Cars.
Hannah was obsessed with Cars.
I probably watched it, I don't know how many times.
Would you say that was your favorite Pixar movie for a period of time?
I mean, Incredibles was, but when Cars came out, yeah, it was my number one for a little bit of time.
Okay.
I now find myself wondering why that was ever the case.
I think what it is children like things that are bright, that are shiny.
Yeah.
They like vehicles.
Yeah.
And Cars sells merchandise.
Yeah. First thing I noticed, oh wow.
Owen Wilson as a car.
All I can hear is Owen Wilson saying wow.
So my first thought was that Cars has the longest runtime so far, so maybe that's why it sucks. That's literally what I wrote down. My quote.
It was like 1 hour too long.
I think
it was ridiculous.
I mean, we don't want to Cars. We can give our opinion because it's there's a lot wrong with Cars.
Yeah.
Cars did not need to be as long as it was. The fact that it is, if not the longest the longest Pixar movie ever, but at least at this point, it did not need to be this long. And it's interesting because I think the intro to Cars is really good.
It is.
The first 5 minutes, I think, is maybe one of the best intros.
It's really captivating.
It's got a good song to go along with it.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was like, it's actually pretty good. But you know what's not good? Ka-chow.
Yeah.
How is Ka-chow
Ka-now. No.
What are you saying?
It's I just stopped.
Were you trying to make a pun? Were you trying to make a pun?
Trying to make a pun. It didn't work.
Ka-no. Ka-chow is a terrible catchphrase, and we yet again go back to the trope of an asshole learning to be better.
Yeah, but to be honest, Lightning McQueen is really the entire movie, I think. I don't think he really learns a lot until the last 5 minutes.
Lightning McQueen changes 5 minutes before he leaves the town, and then we're expected to believe that he's different.
Yeah. One thing I would point out at the beginning of the race, the opening scene, I did like how the crowd was just a bunch of cars.
Yes.
And how they did the wave with their headlights since they don't have arms. It also reminded me that our brother hates the wave at sporting events because he said the people's arms look like tiny worms.
Coming out, tiny worms coming out of holes. I don't know. I will say, the one thing, again, when I was talking about Children Love Colors, the coloring is very good in this movie.
Yeah, it is.
The colors are very pop.
It's very
stand
appealing.
Out. We've got, Lightning McQueen's this bright red racing car. Cars did give us the best version of Life is a Highway. I made sure, and it was Rascal Flatts recorded
it specifically for the movie.
Exactly. They gave us that.
I said any movie with Life is a Highway is just better in my opinion.
Yes. Would you say that Cars is kind of like Talladega Nights but for children?
I kind of got that because the part he's driving backwards at one point, like it is very reminiscent.
Because I think Talladega Nights came out before that. Wondering. So Talladega Nights also came out in 2006.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
So I was like, it feels like, because NASCAR was like, must have been big at that time, I guess. I don't want to go in just saying everything that's wrong with this movie, but it's boring.
It is boring.
It's a boring movie.
It is boring. This is what I will say. The movie suffers from a lack of developed side characters.
It suffers, unlike Finding Nemo, where you have a cast that is in a self-contained area that are all interesting and unique. This movie takes that and just basically gives each car a common basic denominator. That's them.
And they're kind of in a trope. Like,
and that's all you get. Like, you have the hippie van. Yeah. You have the militant Jeep. You have like the Italian sports car.
And then you have the Latin, like, body paint car. It's just... Yeah, they're very, like... I don't want to say...
The movie has one interesting character.
I would say two.
I'm gonna... I think there's one interesting character in this movie.
I would like to point out that Sally has a tramp stamp.
Sally has a tramp stamp.
A lot of the jokes just really fell flat for me.
It's... I just, like, I don't care about the town. They don't make me care about it. This is an instance where their show don't tell does not work.
Yeah, they tried to do a montage where they basically show how Radiator Springs went from this really popular, like, touristy place to then they built a highway and it became, like, non-existent because people stopped taking the side roads. And it doesn't make me feel...
I didn't get anything out of that.
I just didn't feel much.
I think the thing is, it's because they picked a song that wasn't right for the scene, and they also didn't really... It's hard to show emotion with cars, you know? So it just, like, didn't work, and I didn't care. The problem was I already didn't care about the town, so them trying to make me sympathetic towards it. Yeah. It's just, like, the small town story didn't work. We didn't need it to be as long as it need to be. Like, it felt like there was so much filler that they could have cut out.
The only scene I really did enjoy is at the end, lightning, like, fixes up the road and they turn all the lights at once.
Yeah, like,
it was just appealing to me, but that was pretty much it.
But my least favorite part is he just decides all at once in about 2 minutes to get everything everyone in the town has in a span of about 2 minutes. He looks great. He gets this great new paint job. He gets new wheels, and they immediately take it away. Yeah. They're like, all right, well, here's this new look he had. Oh, sorry.
It's just for show. It's just
immediately go back to his old look.
I don't really want to talk about this movie much more.
The only story I cared about is Doc.
Yeah, I would agree.
As the side story. I didn't care about anyone else. I was going to say, we don't need to go any more into this. John Ratzenberger in this movie plays the truck. The other thing I forgot to mention is... Mater sucks.
Mater is maybe my least favorite side character in any Pixar movie.
Do you know how not excited I am to get to Cars 2?
Yeah, we are dreading Cars 2.
It's all about Mater. Yeah. Matering me wanna vomit.
Okay, I don't think we need any more negativity. I think we're just ready to move
on. Best character for me was Doc.
Yeah, I would agree. Hudson. Doc has the best character. Sally, to me, I just like because she's...
Sally's likable just because she's Bonnie Hunt. That's the only reason she's likable.
Yeah. I would say Doc has the best story. He actually has, like, some sort of, like, oh, he was this great race car, and then he got in an accident, and everything like that. The only line that I actually liked...
I have one line.
It says, cars didn't drive on it to make great time, they drove to have a great time.
Yeah. I went with a comedy line when he's hooked up to the machine and the visitors are coming through. Oh, yeah. And he's like, I'm in hillbilly hell, my IQ's dropping by the second. Yeah.
It's just, it just has a lot of issues, this movie, to me, and it really suffers from a lack of...
It suffers a lot.
Character development.
It also brings us Planes. Yeah. Although not Pixar...
Which we don't have to watch.
Full length, we don't have to watch. Amazing. We already talked about the best scene. I think it's the opening. I think it's the best scene in the movie. Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it.
All right, let's move on. Okay. All right, now we get to go back to
great movie.
Good stuff with Ratatouille. Released in 2007. Yep. It has a G rating and a runtime of 1 hour and 51 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And it was 623 million worldwide at the box office.
So Ratatouille has a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 96 out of 100 on Metacritic, and a cinema score of A.
Yep. Little summary. In one of Paris's finest restaurants, Remy, a determined young rat, dreams of becoming a renowned French chef, setting off this hilarious chain of events.
All right, I could talk about this movie forever.
Yeah.
There are so many things done right and done well.
What was your first thought?
My first thought was that as much as I like it, the intro is a bit weird. The way they start the movie, the fact that it's like a freeze frame and it's like you're wondering how I got in this situation.
It is strange.
I was like, I feel like it could be better.
They could have done it better.
I think
my first thought was, this is the first time I've ever thought a rat was cute.
Remy is cute. He's a cute little rat. And his little rat feet.
I did a little research.
Okay.
Ratatouille actually led to an increase in pet rat sales.
I'm not surprised.
After the movie came out. There was a 50% increase in pet rat sales.
That doesn't surprise me. Oh, I also had something about the Cars had the chase scene where the police officer's chasing him, but it's also like at the beginning of the movie, so and I guess you could say racing's a chase, but who cares?
Going back to Ratatouille, this movie just always makes me want to eat food.
Oh my god.
I have read a lot about this. The way they do the scenes is like accurate.
And the sound design.
Yeah. I did look. Oh, so they had this guy named Thomas Keller, who's a professional chef. They hired him as like a consultant.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because if you notice, like kitchen sequences, like they keep the counters clear. Like they do things that you're supposed to do in a professional kitchen.
Yeah, pull your arms in to avoid.
So I do like that they took the effort to like pay attention to those sort of details.
Yeah, I think that's important. I liked the way they used a visual representation of taste. I really liked the way they did that, where it's like you can picture these flavors.
You can like almost smell what they're smelling just based off of it. I also just really like the landscape.
The landscape is great.
His apartment looking over.
Michael Gian, God, I cannot pronounce his name. Giancino. I'll figure it out by the next
we apologize.
Episode. I'm sorry butchering it. I'm sorry if I'm offending you. But he did the score for Ratatouille. And it is, again, done so well. The leitmotifs in this movie are that little theme, you know, that like do.
Yeah.
That part, there's a couple times when it comes back in, but I like they go back to the tiny items.
Yes.
Like with A Bug's Life, you know, and the Toy Story, where they have those little tiny houseboats and they're able to use equipment. I like Remy having this, like, imaginary representation of Gusteau that's, like, helping him and leading him.
It's sort of like his fairy godmother. They're like guardian. You know what I mean?
His
like
guardian fairy godmother, where it's this famous chef and he's just imagining him as, like, someone to talk to because he feels, you know, he loves his family, but he just feels so outcast and he doesn't fit in and he's like, I just want to live my dream.
Yeah, and he also has a father who doesn't understand.
Doesn't support
Who doesn't really understand or doesn't support what he wants to do. I also really like the different character, like, conflict dynamic in this.
Yes.
So, like, one hand you have Remy and his father, we talked about not understanding his passion, and then you have Linguini, who's never really had success.
And also doesn't have, you know, any support system.
Right. And then you also have Remy and the relationship with Linguini, and how they both want the same thing, they just can't do it without the other.
Right. And then you also have, like, Colette and Linguini, and I like, one of the things I really liked was when Linguini shows up, the kitchen staff is on his side, like, immediately.
Yeah.
They're like, we hired him, like, he's, you know, like...
Granted, they said they'll make him, like, a dish boy, but
yeah,
also,
but I mean, like,
they're rooting for him.
They know his mom, and they support him, but, like, it's so interesting to see a character in Linguini, because he's so awkward and unsure, and, like...
He's not your typical...
And he lacks confidence, and it's
he's not your typical main character.
No, and I like that, like, seeing him coming to terms with his past, with his future, and dealing with it, I think is really well done.
I also like the, one thing I really enjoy about this movie is movies tend to do this thing where they, especially movies for kids, where they, like, the endings don't sometimes make sense because it just it wouldn't add up. And I like at the end how they don't have Linguini being a head chef. They have him like being the server, being out like and talking with the people,
because that's what he's
because
good
they
at.
understand that he's not really a chef. Like at the end of the day, it was Remy who was the chef the whole time. So I do like that. I do like that it's not, and also he shouldn't be in charge. He doesn't have really a lot of leadership potential.
No,
he doesn't have any experience. So I like that Colette kind of becomes the person in charge.
Yeah, becomes his mentor, becomes, you know, someone he can look up to and learn from. And I like because he's so, like, lacks so much confidence and is so, like, insecure and awkward that he's immediately willing to, like, let Remy cook for him. Because like, he's knows. On board. Yeah. He says, "I love little rat feet," at one point, and I just liked him talking about little rat feet. There's also some
really good, like, humor. Like, there's a point when Linguini says, he goes, "I have a tiny little," he's trying to say tiny rat, little, and Colette immediately looks down to his crotch.
Looks down. There's the chef that keeps finding Remy and him talking, and then, like, will go around a corner and look back and he's gone,
he, like, thinks he's going crazy.
Opens the freezer. I love that. Like, the humor is done so well. Like, the little montage of them learning to cook is great. Like, the one where he throws the omelet in the pan out the window and he goes to take out the blindfold room. He's just like, don't look.
Like I said, I really like the detail to, like, the actual kitchen sequences. The sequences where they're making the food is just, like, so satisfying.
It is.
Especially the last one where they're making the ratatouille. There's just something so satisfying about it.
Yeah. And I love that the villain is a food critic.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best done things, and he's, like, lives in a coffin. Like, his like, house is shaped like a coffin. He's super dark, and he's, like, jaded.
I mean, we'll get into it because it's
sinister.
I want to get more towards that when I talk about, like, my favorite scene and all that. But he is a really compelling character. I just think the characters are done really well.
Like, I love Colette. I think Colette's really interesting. Yeah. All of the chefs. This is a situation where the other chefs don't get a lot of character.
No.
But they fill their role, and you feel like you understand them without necessarily needing that interaction.
And I think it's so interesting how they all leave at the end and they don't actually come back.
Yes.
Besides Colette.
Oh, yeah.
She's the one who comes back.
Oh. We should mention John Ratzenberger in this movie plays the waiters. One of the waiters.
Yeah.
And we do see a chase sequence in the middle where Remy has got the documents that says Linguini is Gusto's son.
Right.
He's running away, trying to get that to him. And I think I really like that towards the end of the movie, both main characters are wrong.
Yeah.
Linguini's wrong because he lets this fame and this, you know, his superiority and, like, the fact that he's well-regarded get to his head because, you know, all he knows is just failure.
Yep.
So he gets all this success and he can't handle it, and Remy's in the wrong because he's jaded that, you know, Linguini's getting this, and he doesn't personally get the recognition. So he lets in the rats to eat all the food.
And he also is he won't let any of the other chefs do it. You know what I mean? He thinks he knows everything.
He knows best. He won't let Colette help him.
Right.
And then you get where Linguini, like, he apologizes right away because he's like, I'm sorry, like, you know, this is a lot to handle. I'm sorry. The last 30 minutes of the movie are so well done.
It is very well done.
It's just, like, them, you know, Colette, you know, coming to terms with, you know, anyone can cook. You know, she's like, okay, I guess I can be on board, and, you know, and dealing with the food critic and serving him, and just a bunch of rats in a kitchen.
Yeah. There's a lot they do really well. Are you ready to get in? Because I have by far my favorite scene is Ego eating the ratatouille. And, like, going back to his childhood, like how certain foods you eat, like, bring back memories. He remembers his mom, like, making it for him, and then his review.
Yes. If I were to pick two, that'd be my second favorite scene. I think it's so well done, and one of my favorite quote is one of the ones from the review is something he says in that. But my favorite scene, though, is the very end of the movie. He has his restaurant, you know, it's just the music used there. I love that song, the way it builds, and, you know, he gets his restaurant, you know, Anton is investor and, like, goes there and serves him, and Colette, and just all the unity, and I just really like the way it all came together in the end.
And I like that it's not, like, a perfect ending, because the restaurant does shut down.
Yeah, Gusto shuts
down because of health violations, obviously, but it's not, like, the perfect ending. But my favorite quote, it's Ego talking, it's in his review. It says, "In the past, I have made no secret of my disdain for Chef Gusto's famous motto, 'Anyone can cook.' but I realize only now that I do truly understand what he meant. Not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere.
I was gonna say that last sentence was my quote. Yep. Not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist.
I mean,
can
that whole
come from
review
anywhere.
is just really well.
It's really well done.
I just think it's really good.
Did you have a favorite character?
So I struggle between Remy, Linguini, and Colette. I think all three of them you could probably make a case for.
I think so.
At the end, I ended up going with Linguini. I just think...
I was going to say, I also literally chose about 2 seconds ago, and I also picked Linguini.
I think that he... I do like that he's not your typical, like, main
hero.
Character.
Yeah, he's not the typical,
he's
like...
weird, he's nerdy, he's not...
awkward,
like, special.
he's clumsy.
There's nothing, like, really unique about him. But I think that, like, he's able to find himself.
Right.
Through, it's kind of funny because it's through another characters.
Right.
It's also through Colette. It's through Remy and through Colette, but
yeah, and through Gusteau, technically, through his father.
But he's able to kind of find himself within that, and he does. I mean, he lets it get to him a little bit, the fame, but also he's never experienced that. So,
and he's not like rude about it.
No, but he apologizes.
He immediately like realizes his mistake and wants to correct it.
So I just like that, his whole development and everything.
Great movie. Okay, now we get into WALL-E. So WALL-E
2008.
Done in 2008. Mm-hmm. It was rated G, and it has a runtime of 1 hour and 39 minutes.
And it had a worldwide box office was $521 million.
Okay. So WALL-E has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 95 on Metacritic, and an A rating. I also forgot to mention that after Finding Nemo became the first animated movie to win, or Pixar movie to win the Animated Feature Award, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, and WALL-E would also go on to win that award as well. Cars was nominated, but surprisingly did not win.
Wow. Wow.
What a shock.
So, summary, after hundreds of lonely years of doing what he was built for, the curious and lovable robot, WALL-E, discovers a new purpose in life when he meets a sleek robot named Eve. Join them and a hilarious cast of characters on a journey across the universe. I will say that I was not looking forward to watching this movie. As a kid, I probably haven't seen this movie in 10 years. I remembered it just being very, like, slow and boring. That's what I was going into with it.
Was that your first thought?
Yeah.
So mine was that I don't remember the movie starting with a musical number, and I felt like it was a little jarring. That was my
second thought. It was weird.
And I'll say I kind of had a similar thing where I was kind of indifferent to WALL-E previously. Like, I've seen it, and I didn't remember loving it. I didn't remember hating it. Just like it was a movie that existed.
I relate to WALL-E watching two people in love and then just, like, holding his own hand. Like, I was like, that's me.
So WALL-E is probably the most conflicted I felt about a movie so far. I think it's 35 minutes are maybe the best 35 minutes Pixar's ever done.
I would agree.
I think it's the way they convey his curiosity and the way he interacts with the world.
With no actual speaking.
It felt a lot like Little Mermaid when she's learning about the human world and she can't talk, but she's so expressive and exploring. And I love the way his interactions with Eve and the way he cares for her and their, relationship growing and just the emptiness and the landscape.
Yeah.
I've said previously that Bug's Life, like, looked really bad.
Yeah.
In this one, like, the environments look amazing.
I also, like, think this movie, especially now, like, it hits hard.
It hits hard, but...
Like, and it came out in 2008, so that was, 12 years ago. Like, it's still very relevant, I feel like.
So the thing is as good as that first part is, I just did not care about any of the robot subplot.
The problem is the side characters, and they introduced the humans. Like, it's just... There's certain things I liked, but I think, to me, WALL-E is really about WALL-E and Eve.
Yeah.
Their interactions.
I just, like, there's... the fact that it's like robots are taking over humans, like that's not a new concept.
Yeah,
and
it's
like,
been done.
Clearly I care about the environment, and that is a subplot that should work, but I just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, like
They don't, because I don't think they really make you necessarily care about it. To me, it feels more like a love story than it should feel more like this is the consequences
like
of actions.
I feel like it's shifts where like the first part of the movie is the love story, and the second part that's just a side plot that exists in this grander scheme, but it's just, I don't feel like I cared.
Yeah, I will say, like, the thing I thought they did the best after they, besides the first 30 minutes, was like the space scene.
The scene where they're flying around in space.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done.
There was also a chase scene where the robots are chasing them somewhere in the middle of the movie.
I did think the one thing I somewhat liked is the concept of being, like, so sucked into technology that you don't even realize what's happening around you. Right. It is still relevant.
Still relevant. Probably more so than it was in 2008. Yeah.
There's a lady, one of the main characters. Yes. John Ratzenberg plays, I think his name is John. I did write that it didn't really have a lot of memorable side characters for me.
Yeah. I didn't really care about the other robots.
Yeah.
So much.
I think it was meant to be a simplistic movie with like complex.
Yeah, it's just, it's hard because ideas. I really liked the first part. I was really so engaged. I didn't even look at my phone or look at my. I barely, other than taking notes, I didn't look away from the screen for like at least 35 minutes. I wasn't expecting to be as entertained. And like there was basically no dialogue either.
Yeah. There was a part when they were inside Wally's little like place where he has all of his stuff he finds. It was really cute. He kept like handing her like stuff, and she kept like she solved the Rubik's Cube and all this. It was really cute. I thought. Also, there was this part where she was holding an egg beater.
Yep,
it gave me chills because I had a mishap when I was a child where I got an electric egg beater. Like my hair got stuck in it, and the beater part went all the way up to my scalp, and like my hair was tangled in it. It was horrible. It took like an hour to get my hair out.
You know, that is something I thought of when I saw that.
So that like gave me chills thinking about that.
I'll just tie this into what I think the best scenes are. The one I have a two-parter because they're kind of shorter. One is where he's showing Eve everything that you're just talking about, like the video, and I've discovered, because I had thought that the musical is Hello Dolly, but the musical is Hello Dolly. Okay. In case you were not aware of that.
I did like the spaceship, scene outside with the fire extinguisher.
The other favorite scene was when they're flying in space.
It was just cute.
It's the visuals and the music.
Yeah.
The song that played during that was really well done.
I think my favorite line, the captain goes, which means it's our 700th anniversary of our 5-year cruise.
Yeah.
I like that line.
I had a really hard time coming up with a quote, so I picked one that I felt was really relevant, and you kind of touched on it with the being absorbed in the interior technology, and also right now having, being in the middle of a pandemic is where the one guy's like, what do you want to do? And the other guy's like, I don't know, something.
Yeah, because it's like, I just think it did, like, this movie kind of did strike me as relevant in the time that we're in right now.
Right.
So there was like those moments. I just think the first half of the movie was done a lot better than the second half.
I wish it could be as good as the first half. It was so solid.
I would agree. I think my favorite character was probably Wally.
I was gonna say Wally.
He just is very like likable. He's naive. He doesn't really know. He's had this idea of what love is basically through watching a movie, a musical.
He's so expressive and so curious.
So the person who plays Wally is Ben Burt.
Okay.
Who's responsible for the sound of R2-D2
from
Star Wars.
That makes sense.
He's done other sound work, but he did R2-D2 for Star
that
Wars.
Would make sense.
I just know, I did look up that. I saw
Hey, there's that George Lucas connection.
There we go.
Star Wars connection again.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I definitely appreciate it more as an adult.
I do too.
But I also just think that they didn't execute it in the way I wish they would have.
I think I'm the same, where it's not so much that I just don't have really opinion on it. It's I have mixed opinions. Right. Because it's in some ways amazing, and in some ways just like not.
There's just not a lot there.
What I want it to be.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
All right, now we move on to Up. Up was released in 2009.
Yep.
It has a rating of PG, the second movie after The Incredibles to have a PG rating, and it ran for an hour and 36 minutes.
Okay. Box office worldwide is 735 million, which actually was the highest since Finding Nemo.
Okay. Up has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 98%, a Metacritic score of 88 out of 100, and a Cinema score of A+.
Little summary. Retired balloon salesman Carl Fredrickson, part rascal and part dreamer, takes to the sky by tying thousands of balloons to the house. Unbeknownst to Carl, a young wilderness explorer named Russell becomes an unexpected stowaway on the journey they never expected.
So, Up was also nominated for the Best Animated Feature and won that category, but it was also the first Pixar movie nominated for Best Picture.
Okay.
In general. The second animated movie after Beauty and the Beast to be nominated.
Okay, that's interesting. First thought... Well, actually, my first thought wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So, the beginning of the movie, Carl's like a kid. He's watching a black and white film movie. And I just thought, when I was a kid, I thought, like, that people, like, lived in black and white. God. Like, I thought because they watched films in black and white, that meant, like, when they went outside, it was, like, they saw black and white.
I forgot about that, yeah.
And then, obviously, right after that, I just, like, knew that opening montage was coming, and I was, like, emotionally preparing myself for that.
My first thought was about how Carl and Ellie interacting as kids was, like, they're so passionate and have this shared common bond. It was just really cute to see that connection form.
Yeah.
But then we get to...
It's arguably the saddest...
It's, I think, the best...
montage.
The best Pixar montage.
Yeah, I would agree.
With, again, also, Michael did the music again for Up. To no surprise, another great soundtrack.
Yeah, I like that you feel so much emotion without having to hear a single word spoken.
The whole scene takes place in less than 5 minutes, and it's an entire life.
It's their entire life.
In, like, 4.5 minutes.
And it doesn't feel like it's fast forwarding through their life. It's literally, you feel like you've grown up.
And you see this life stages, where they find out they can't have children, and where she... gets injured and sick and is in the hospital, and it's just their whole life of... The worst part, I think, is when you watch her tie his ties every single day, and then when he goes to visit her in the hospital, she touches his bow tie. Yeah. Because she notices, he can't tie a tie because she always did it for him. And from that point on in the movie, you only see him in bow ties.
Yeah. And I think it's such a beautiful montage, basically... that they've had this whole time they've been dreaming of going on this vacation and going to Paradise Falls, and it's like such a reminder that life just gets in the way.
Yeah.
You see them, they have this piggy bank, like jar of money, and they keep having to crack it open because they have to fix a car, fix a roof, or whatever.
Right. The music, the changes in music to convey the feelings after they found out they can't have kids, and you just see her just like sitting on this chair, feeling, and you can just like, she doesn't even have expression really. She's just like
she's just like numb.
She's and it's just the way that they were able to convey the feelings and the emotions that this couple went throughout their entire life, from childhood to to Ellie's death, is just, it's heavy.
Yeah, this movie actually is really, there's a lot of really heavy elements.
It's
even with Russell, like, basically his dad's, like, not around. He lives with, I think it's, like, a foster mom? I'm not sure
if is that his real mom?
No, because he said, there was a line where
I know he said Phyllis isn't my mom, but I just assumed that meant that his dad remarried.
Oh, it could be. I'm not really sure. They don't really explain it, but basically his dad's not around.
My interpretation was that it was his dad remarried his mom, like got remarried, and then
he basically
stopped spending time with him.
It could be,
but it could also be that as well.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like a foster, but essentially he doesn't really have like a
support system,
a parental figure. One of the things that I kind of wrote about was I liked how you get to see the development of like Russell seeing Carl as like someone he can look up to, and like a figure, like a father figure, and Carl never got to have kids.
And also Carl getting to have that opportunity to be that support system for the kids they could never have.
Right. He never got the chance to do that. So they both kind of get a chance to experience something they've never really got to experience.
Right.
So I really did enjoy that.
I hate the part where he hits the construction worker.
Yeah, that's really depressing.
It's so understandable.
Yeah.
On both sides, you know, the fact that they're like, we have to take your home away from you and you need to go to a senior center because you just bludgeoned this man and he's bleeding. You see him bleeding from the head.
And they call him like a public menace.
But on the other hand, it's like he's just trying to live his life and they're trying to take his house.
And I mean, the way I looked at it too is like that's his whole life with his wife who had passed away is spent in that house, and now they're basically trying to tear it down to build like a
take away all
city.
he knows. I know, so it's just
and they back into his mailbox, which him and his wife made together. Like it's just a lot of sentimental stuff for him.
So it's just hard to see that.
Yeah.
Because you see it in his face, like immediately he feels bad and he's like, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's really like...
And the guilt.
The whole thing to me was just really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think that... what's his name? Charles Muntz, who is like the... Explorer who Carl looks up to as a kid.
Right.
I do like the idea of having someone you look up to, like, don't meet your heroes. Mm-hmm. You know, because he ends up basically becoming the villain of the movie.
Also, the first, again, kind of like Finding Nemo, the first 30 minutes of this movie are so packed with context and events and things that happen.
Yeah. Like,
we leave. Like, we're already out of the city and on the way to Paradise Falls within 30 minutes of the movie.
And they get there pretty quickly. Like, they're across the, I don't know, ravine or whatever it is from it. But I didn't understand how old Charles was.
I was confused on that as well.
Carl was like 10 or 11 and Charles was probably like in his 25.
Yeah.
I'm like, Carl's got to be like
so
70s, 80s?
I would say maybe he's 70s.
So Charles is like 80 something?
I mean, because there are 90-year-olds who still...
he also has murdered like more than 10 people probably.
This is by far the strangest cast of characters of any movie.
Yeah.
You've got a bird named Kevin. You've got talking dogs.
Yeah.
And you've got this crazy old explorer who's been killing people.
Just, like, living his life in Paradise Falls, murdering people over a bird.
And he just, like, never left. He's just stayed there the entire time.
I don't know. I felt like the side characters at times... I didn't think the humor was that great in some aspects.
I liked Doug in small doses.
Yeah. I just think I more appreciated the relationship between Russell and Carl.
I think that's the real
the Carl and Ellie story. Like, yes. For me, there was a part where they were flying up in the air and there was a storm.
Yes.
It's my worst nightmare. It also reminded me when we were flying back from California.
Oh my god,
and the lady sitting, I was like probably 14 or 15.
You would have been, I was 18. So
okay,
you were,
so like
so
16.
You would have been 16, yeah.
Sitting on the plane, the lady next to me, like we're coming through the clouds and the sun's coming through and this lady thinks it's lightning. And she's like, oh my god, the plane's gonna go down, like, this is horrible. And I'm, like, sitting there as a 16-year-old, like, horrified. I didn't want to fly anyways. I'm, like, freaking out. But that's all I could think about during that scene. But I don't know. I think, to me, the real heart of the story is Carl's so fixated on possessions, on material things, because he doesn't have his wife. That's all he has left of her, is the house, is the things inside. And then at the end of the movie, he's able to, like, let go of the house.
Right. He's able to let go and realize that he needs to live, to adventure and
to have a life, because... And I do like... One of the things I liked was Ellie has this book.
Yep. That's my favorite quote comes through.
Do you want to save that then? We can save that. Let me see if there's anything else I had. Carl should have broken his hip multiple times. He fell so many times. I'm just saying.
He should have broken his hips or his legs or a rib. The old man fighting should have. He's no way he could run. That's why I think he has to be somewhat younger, because there's no way he could run. Saying.
That was pretty much it, I guess.
I was going to say, there's not too much, like, story.
I did research. I wondered how many balloons they used.
Yeah. Also, I wrote a note about this, but kind of it just had to throw logic out the window because there's no way you could uproot a house from its foundation and also fly with enough helium to get to South America.
Sometimes you just have to use your imagination.
I suspended belief.
But the people who created Up revealed that there was 10,297 balloons.
Okay.
Which there's no way Carl could have blown up that many balloons
in one night. No. So what would you say was the best character in this movie?
I had to go with Carl.
I did as well.
I think people can relate to him, and you can't help but feel for him. Like, he's not even that unlikable. He's not like the old, like, really cranky man. Like, he's funny.
Right.
Like, he's got really sarcastic comments.
He's funny, yeah.
And he's obviously, like, he's lost his wife. Like, he doesn't have kids.
I was gonna say, he's grieving. He doesn't have a support system.
So you just, like, can't help but feel for him.
Right. Yeah, I also picked Carl as well because I think it's just, like, even if you're, like, I mean, clearly we're not elderly, but you can relate to so many things about the way he feels and the way he sees things and, you know, being able to let Russell in after, you know, denying him and being, you know, sarcastic and kind of mean to him, but learns to be there for him.
Favorite quote was actually different than my favorite scene. It was actually something Russell had said.
Okay.
He was talking about his dad and, like, how they used to, like, go get ice cream and all this stuff. And he said something, he said that might sound boring, but I think the boring stuff might be the stuff I remember the most.
Yes.
Which I feel like is really fitting, because when you think back, like, I feel like a lot of the stuff I remember is, like, such random, not, like, hugely adventurous things, just, like, random stuff.
Trivial things.
And I also really liked the callback to when he said we would go get ice cream from this place. At the end of the movie, he, like, him and Carl go get ice cream, and he does his badge and all that.
And the counting, like, the cars thing.
Yeah. So I like that.
I liked that as well. Yeah, so best scene I picked was that married life sequence.
Yeah.
But the quote I picked from what you're talking about when he sees the book, goes back in the house after it's on fire, you know, and he is looking at their adventure book, and he sees that she's added photos from their life, their wedding, and you know, their life and their jobs, and just them living life. And at the end of it, it says, "Thanks for the adventure. Now go have a new one."
Yeah, it's like I'm like getting teary-eyed thinking about it.
It's just like it was just it's so heartwarming.
That was my favorite scene, because I technically I mean the opening montage, of course, but I think there's something about, like, he always felt like he didn't give Ellie an adventure because he didn't get to take her to Paradise Falls. They didn't get to, like, travel.
But she was set. Their life was her adventure.
She always thought of their greatest adventure being, like, their life together. And I think like he had never seen that part of the book. He had never looked past the stuff I want to do.
He had to come to terms with that, because in his mind it was their adventure was, we have to go to Paradise Falls.
He felt like he let her down. And I think, like, just that idea that sometimes the greatest adventures are just, like, the simple things, like just having a life together. So I really liked that. I thought that was just, like, a really touching thing.
Yeah, I really liked that scene as well.
Yeah, I think Up is it's obviously a really emotional movie.
It's very heavy.
Yeah, there's a lot of subject matter in it that's really, like, I mean, even, like, having to go to a nursing home, like, it's just, like, it's, you know, it's complex stuff. But I think some of the side characters for me just, like, aren't that memorable. I think the real bond is, like, Russell and Carl, and then Carl and, like, Ellie's life. I would say that's, like, the main thing.
Coming to terms with, like, loss and grief and moving on, and just, like, I think the thematic elements are done very well, like the themes and what the characters learn. But I agree, the story, once they get to Paradise Falls, is kind of lacking.
So we're gonna end with that.
Yes.
We will be watching and recording the rest of the discussion and then getting into rankings.
And we'll be coming back to you with, we'll have to contain ourselves with Cars 2.
It's gonna be, I mean, I just am already dreading it.
It's either gonna be the longest or the shortest movie discussion.
Yeah, probably longest, because I'm just ready to totally roast it.
Are you ready to experience the joy that is Mater?
No, because I hate Mater.
Spy thriller?
Absolutely not.
I am also dreading it.
Yeah, so that's what we have to look forward to in life.
We have to look forward to a Michael Caine talking to us. Can I just pretend he's Nigel Powers?
Sure. If that's what helps you get through it, then sure.
Yeah. if there's two things I hate in life, it's people who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch. The Dutch.
We would like to thank Joseph McDade for our intro music. He provides free music available for all kinds of creative use. The song that we used is called Sunrise Expedition, and you can find it and his other music on his website, josephmcdade.com. If you would like to find us on social media, you can follow us on Instagram by searching Research, Rank, Repeat.